Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pancake Parlay, episode 97. I'm your host, The Don, and I'm here with Chatters. How are you today?
I'm good, Don. How are you?
I'm good. The Pancake Parlay is a podcast every single week where we talk about general pop culture, movies, TV, video games, comics, all that type of good stuff. Remember to like us, subscribe, share, basically all the social medias, more or less. But yeah, let's just jump straight into current news, current topics. And the first one is more or less about what's happening in the current world. As we mentioned in the previous episode, we're going to try to call it a crisis at times. And essentially what's happening is, since there's a lot of people that are at home, they're kind of, I guess quarantining themselves. I'm assuming there's just a lot of demand for, streaming services, people watching videos online and things like that. And basically, the news is that Netflix and YouTube have slowed their not only their speed, but I think they've downgraded their what do you call it, the HD? Is that correct?
Yeah, so like at the moment, with all the like kind of streaming platforms, I wouldn't be surprised if like Twitch will be doing the same thing too, because I feel that streaming videos on Twitch consumes a lot of bandwidth. But we'll have to see. I don't know if people watch Twitch as like a company as much as, let's say, like YouTube and stuff. But yeah, at the moment, like both companies, YouTube and Netflix, they'll be measured effects put in place for video streams for 30 days. So more or less, they're gonna, I think, reduce it at like a 25% capacity, just so that they can kind of allow everybody to have access with it without, quote unquote, the internet breaking. And it's quite interesting because I don't know, like, if you pay for a service and you're not getting said service, I think technically you do have a right to at least some form of compensation, whether it would be in the form of like a few extra months of Netflix or something like that. It would actually be pretty cool if Netflix was like, you know what, screw it, everybody has access to Netflix for the next like month or so on quarantine. I
Or they
don't know
can
if
do
you know.
that thing where it's like a trial where it's like what $1 or something like that. Just
Or something. I mean, like, because initially it was actually really funny because back when Italy was obviously, having, well, it currently is still having issues with quarantining and stuff. Pornhub gave every person in Italian like free premium membership, but now that's extended to the world. So like you can make an account and get a Pornhub premium membership, which I found kind of funny. So if they
Mamma
kind of
mia.
do, yeah, so if they do kind of like a similar thing, that would be pretty interesting if they just kind of give people like a 30-day free trial or something and just had everybody just use the SD format or the HD format. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think like or like streaming consumes so much kind of bandwidth,
Yeah,
and
well,
just
that's like,
kind of
it's amazing how where we've gone in the past, like probably 10 plus years. Because I even remember like 2010, there really wasn't really many streaming things. I remember like Justin TV, which was basically very early Twitch or before it became Twitch, I guess. And there's a few other stuff like streaming stuff didn't really wasn't really a thing. And I feel like in the past few years it's kind of grown, and like obviously I do remember back in the days of YouTube in like 2007, 2008, where it's like you like pretty much all general people can only release things in like 15-minute chunks.
mm.
So we've really moved in the past 10 to 15 years.
I mean, we have in a way, but we haven't in other ways. There hasn't been that much competition between, watching something like, if you want to watch video games, yeah, you go to Twitch, and YouTube's been trying to like slowly encroach on the same thing with like Microsoft with like Mixer and
Or even
stuff.
like
But for
Facebook
them,
has their own gaming section, which I'm like, okay, who?
yeah,
I'm
right,
assuming like the
exactly.
only people do that are like, I want to get my own audience, and like if I get my own audience on Facebook, like, because I'm assuming like, like try to go on Twitch and start gaming, like you won't get any viewers, maybe like one person type of thing. So it's like, and if you're a new streamer, you can be like,
Mhm.
maybe I can get viewers on like Facebook or something.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all about kind of diversifying your portfolio in terms of where you stream, right? But I think ultimately, like, certain kind of platforms have like a stranglehold on it. Like, like what about YouTube? Like, they don't have many competition in terms of a streaming platform. Mostly because like putting videos like at the rate that they do doesn't actually, it's not very profitable. YouTube for the most part. I know there's like BitChute. That's like a website that's slowly kind of coming up and allowing for like streaming, like I guess like peer-to-peer streaming, which is kind of interesting as well, of videos, and then also just general streaming. So that'll be a pretty interesting thing when that kind of like goes fully online. But yeah, for the most part, like when these companies have a monopoly, that kind of allows for them to kind of get a bit ahead of themselves and feel like they don't need to actually try. But then, like as you're seeing now, they're like, oh, by the way, we have to reduce capacity because we can't provide the services because we didn't take into account of so many people using it. So that's like definitely a fault on their part, not preparing for something like this. As much as what we're all kind of handling at the moment kind of came out of left field, but like with all these tech companies, all you need to do is just get a bunch of servers going, and it'll be fine. But yeah, like for the most part, it's good that the internet isn't breaking, because I feel like that's when all hell will break loose. When people can't watch their
Yeah, like you're telling me I can't self isolate and access anything. It's
yeah.
like,
Well, you tell me I have to read.
or
What
it'd
is
be a thing
this?
where it's like people would like me, for example, who have a big like DVD/Blu-ray collection. And I'm like, aha, I told you all. I told you. If shit goes
Hmm.
down, I'm the one who has the entertainment.
The book collection, yeah. And that's the thing, like in a few places across Europe and the US, there has been like temporary outages of Netflix as well, that people have been like experiencing. So at the moment, there may be more of that happening as we go forward. I haven't had any issues with Netflix at this stage. I think like I didn't have any kind of issues with the internet until like maybe early like 2 weeks ago, and I feel like that's when everything, at least in Australia, was slowly kind of shutting down, and therefore more people were getting on the internet, so there was more things being like consumed at once. But I think for the most part, I haven't had any issues with like streaming or downloading things. It's all been pretty sweet here. So but then again, like like Australia's got like what, 25 million people, America's got like 300, and Europe's got like a shit ton more. So
It's
there's
like
millions of
yeah,
people over there.
yeah, depending on population, but still, I'd
Yeah.
really love, because everyone knows that Australia's internet's pretty damn bad. So I wish that we just had better internet. Like there are a lot of people come here overseas and they're just like, man, it's really slow. So I'm like,
Mm.
and to me this is fast. So imagine like their version of fast is. It's just like you must be able to like upload, you know, video files that are in gigs like really quickly in comparison to here.
Yeah, that's true as well. Like hopefully we'll get better internet infrastructure. Maybe that will be one of the major changes that will happen after all this. I hope so. I hope there's better internet coming forward. But speaking of good news, oh, actually, more bad news. Actually, first off,
Always bad news.
yeah, always bad news. Wonder Woman 1984 has gotten delayed officially till August 14, 2020. Now, there was a bit of like some questions up in the air about there potentially being a digital release of Wonder Woman, because obviously, we were talking about it last week, how certain movies are kind of transitioning over to like the digital format really quickly. And I wonder if this will mean like there might be a bit of like a gap, like the gap between movies coming in cinemas and movies coming to home video, or home DVD, or whatever you want to call it. That time period is going to shorten a lot more because of, I guess, the advent of this. Because people will think, it might, because all right, so let's say, well, like Wonder Woman, it comes out in the cinema like this month, and then we have to wait like you know 3 or 4 months, and then it's available digitally, right? So I'm wondering if this might lead to people having a higher expectation for movies coming straight to a digital format really quicker, if you get what I mean. Like it
Yeah,
comes
where
out
it's basically released probably like most of the time cinema release only really is probably a month, so
a
like
month, yeah.
four weeks, maybe five. around there, and it pretty much tails off from there on out. And then maybe there's the people who like, don't really know the movie or like see it a second time, do it on like the fourth/fifth or sixth like week, but it pretty much dies out from there. So yeah, that is definitely an opportunity, that's for sure. And it's like the real question is who's gonna do it first, slash who's gonna see that where it works, is essentially, because it's like,
Well,
obviously with big corporations they want to know where their money is. If you can get a big gross at the start, and then get a digital release later, the real question, and then like the real question is, they would have to tally up like, okay, if we, and they're kind of playing around with it, because I do remember back in the day it used to be like, obviously when it was on film, it'd take about 6 months for you to
take
kind of,
ages.
yeah, it used to be like a very long time, but now you can kind of get stuff that's pretty much 3 months. They've kind of played around with that, and I wonder if they're going to play around to be like 1 month after you
Even
can get
more.
it digitally. And the real question is like, who's going to do the experiment to do that, and then be like, okay, you can clearly see that people didn't watch it in the cinemas purely because they knew they could see it digitally like a month later.
Because they saw it digitally. Yeah, that's also a concern as well, right? Like, people are like, it's going to come out in a month, I might as well not watch it, right? So yeah, there is probably this balancing act that they have to do, where they have to like determine whether or not it's worth.
Or or what I was thinking is, the only other way to do this is you can get this digitally for like slightly a cheaper, like, or like the exact same price as like a movie ticket, for example. Because obviously, but you can only kind of watch it maybe once, or but that's like you're paying like maybe like $25, but like everyone in your whole family can watch it, type of thing. So it's like,
well, I mean, that's essentially what they did for the what is that new Trolls movie that's coming out that you can watch digitally. Like, you can watch that like that. And so that's the thing. Like, like I think that would cut into the profits quite a lot. And I think and ultimately, I think the other problem is if you kind of release a film digitally only, that kind of like in a way like lowers it in the eyes of people. It's like, oh, this is like a digital release. That's like almost like describing it as like a direct to video movie, right?
But
like
that's the thing. It really is all optics.
So,
like if a generation grows with that being the norm, I think it would disappear. It's just going to be one of those things where it's going to be a hard hurdle to come across at the moment, because it's like, I do remember that was a thing, and it still kind of maybe is a thing, but it isn't as bad. Is movie actors going to TV, because that used to be like a thing where it's like, oh man, you're downgrading yourself. And that doesn't really seem too much of a case anymore. Or like, if you are a big actor, you're there for like a season or like a semi-starring role and disappear, type of thing. So it's
but here's the thing. I think like TV has kind of leveled up quite a lot to cinema proportion in terms of quality, rather than like a traditional, maybe like a soapboxy or like a slope or something like that. Whereas, like, it's still very difficult for a TV actor to go from TV to movie, right? I think the quality of TV shows have leveled up purely because of like the rise of like streaming services that want to produce TV shows, and therefore have been competitively getting high named actors in big roles. It's still probably something we'll have to see going forward, whether there's going to be a big change in all that. But I think it personally, I think it's a good move that that DC's delayed Wonder Woman. I think the problem is that this is technically the second delay that Wonder Woman has had, because originally it was supposed to come out like I think November of last year, but they delayed it. So now that it's coming out in August, like this is more or less like, well, it better come out, because everybody's kind of playing the whole like waiting and reshuffling game. Like, Black Widow got pushed. I think Mulan has got pushed as well. So yeah, there's a lot of
the real question is, how long is it going to be when they're keeping getting pushed? Like, for example, Black Widow is delayed until May. If stuff gets really bad, for example, or like, they could potentially like have to push it again for a second time, type of thing. It's like, how long are you going to give this a buffer time, type of thing? You're going to give it like a few months time, or you're going to like never
the
resolve?
problem is,
for example, stuff like Fast and Furious, that's like 100% like delayed for one whole year. Like, they just like, yep, stay in place, just 1 year away, type of thing. So it's like, there's a lot of things going on, even with TV. For example, one of the news articles is that the last episode of Walking Dead for this season will be released whenever the new season starts. because they can't finish the post production on the the TV episode for the finale. Um, so then there'll be a lot of delays for when it comes to TV shows as well. So then we're going to see a lot of seasons and stuff change. I think all the
Well, you
CW
see,
stuff's halted, all Netflix stuff is halted, pretty much nearly everything has halted.
here's the thing though, with something like TV, TV can be watched at home, right? So yeah, while there will be the delay will be in new TV being made, but currently like in production or post production or like kind of maybe things that they're kind of tweaking, that can still come out because people will still watch things at home. Whether people will want to watch a movie is a totally different question. And I can definitely see people being totally against wanting to be anywhere public right now, just because, at the risk of catching anything. So the big thing is like the shift in culture that will come from all of this. And yeah, like will people still want to watch a movie in a public setting a couple of weeks from now? Probably not.
Yeah,
Um,
it's going to take a lot of learning curves because
so that's
yeah.
the reason why the August date is like a good date, but we'll have to see like what like there has to be a like kind of like a rise in public confidence. And until then, like there'll probably still be people not willing to kind of take the risk of going out.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's the same.
it'll affect them for a very long time. Like I think like it's one of those knock-on effects until like people semi get back to I guess their quote unquote normal lives. I think it's like yeah,
Mhm.
it's just gonna be one of those learning curves.
Yeah, exactly. And so till then, like yeah, it's a shame because I was actually looking forward to this movie, but the more that it's getting pushed back, it's like let me just get it over and done with.
Well, yeah,
Suicide
let's
Squad
say I'm
will
really
come out.
hyped for this movie. Like out of all the movies that are coming out this year, as far as I know, or like whenever they were scheduled, I think Wonder Woman 1984 is probably my most anticipated. Like this year doesn't
Okay.
seem too big when it comes to movies, or like most
Mm,
of the big
I
films
think you're
usually come
right.
out at the end of the year. But like currently Wonder Woman 1984 is probably my most anticipated film of 2020. If it still
Mm.
stays in 2020, so
Yeah, I'm kind of apprehensive about it because I've heard like it looks good and like all the trailers that come out have looked good and I do dig the golden armor that Gal Gadot wears in it. But like I've heard like mixed things like on the set about like whether the story's going to be as good or like continues to be good. But we'll see. I like the first movie, so I hope this one's good too. I guess the big thing is people will probably move towards like a more because with something like movies and TV, it requires like people, to make these things. I think as we're seeing, there's a big drive in like video games because again, people can play video games at home and it doesn't technically require people in the actual video game to play. People can program and make games from home. And a lot of big studios have gone and do that. I'm pretty sure CD Projekt Red is doing that at the moment with their Cyberpunk game, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other video game companies are doing that too. So that's the big thing. It's actually really funny. I don't know if you saw there was people online and like certain articles like news article places like took it up as well about how gamers have to start limiting how much video games they play because it's consuming a lot of bandwidth, except for the fact that playing video games nowhere near consumes as much bandwidth as Netflix, Twitch, YouTube, and all that. It's like a fraction by comparison. I think
I
the
think as
I think
people think that like a game takes a lot of time to kind of I don't know transfer the stuff, but majority of the stuff in game, I'm assuming the way they code a lot of things. If, like for example, if you're playing online, it's not single player stuff obviously, but when you play like online, I think a lot of it
Mhm.
would just probably just be like the way they code it, like enemy is here, you're there. Does your bullet register yes or no? And that's all it
Mhm.
really is. It's just code.
Yeah,
Also, like
and
I
then for
think
the most
video is
part,
a
like
very different thing because it's like yeah, it's hard coded.
yeah, and I think the thing is like I think the game that actually consumed the most was Destiny 2, and that makes sense because again, that's online. You're dealing with multiple things happening all at once. But for the most part, I don't think like I think you're right. Like in terms of what is getting produced and transferred like online in terms of what you're doing, there's not a lot of information being used. It's just visually there looks like there's a lot going on. I think the problem is like when you stream something, it's like the difference between streaming something and downloading something and watching it, right? I've told people like so many times that like watch streaming something consumes so much more bandwidth than just downloading the same thing and just
Like having
watching
it
that.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and just having it there, right? Because one, you don't have to deal with like any like issues with your internet, like carking it and then it affecting it. And sometimes you just get it for the same price anyways, but people would just go for the streaming option. It's very dumb. But again, it fundamentally comes from a misunderstanding of how streaming works. And I think that's the reason why people think it's the case. But yeah, speaking of streaming, um, the Mandalorian season 2 is going to be coming out, and recently they had cast the a new actress. Well, not well, she's not new, but the new character. Well, I
She's
guess the
it's like
character's
yeah
not new
she's
either. But like a new character on the show,
yeah of course.
Ahsoka Tano, who is a character from the Clone Wars TV show.
And I'd say a pretty big
It's
deal. I'd say in big Star
well,
Wars, yeah,
yeah,
circles.
and kind of in kind of extended in extended lore, and especially someone a character that a lot of people really like, is being played by Rosario Dawson. Now, I really like no who what I like Ahsoka Tano. Do you know where Rosario Dawson has acted in before? Because she sounds familiar.
Oh,
Um, and
Rosario Dawson. Yeah, yeah. She's what do you call it? The nurse in the what do you call it? The
oh,
Marvel
in
shows. The Marvel shows.
okay,
She's the nurse. I think that's pretty much her most recent type role.
recent
Aside
role.
aside from that, she's kind of I don't know, she just kind of does random stuff. Like obviously she knows what do you call it? The what do you call it? The Kevin Smith. So he, she's been there for a few times. She's just there as a kind of comedic. I don't know. She does a lot of comedic stuff, I guess.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I don't think she's really hit like big leagues where it's like A-list actor type of thing. I just think she's one of those actors where like you're there, you're there. I mostly know her because of Sin City. She's
Okay.
the girl that Owen Wilson falls in love with. Um,
hmm
but yeah, like she's been just in a
You
lot
know,
of stuff. Just
I'm looking at her filmography, and she does the voice for Wonder Woman in like the DC animated movies that have been coming out, like all the like Justice League Dark and Justice League Throne of Atlantis and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
well, there you
Um,
go. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that she's one of those actors where she's just in a lot of stuff. Just that she doesn't have she's not really 100% in like a leading role where it's like oh yeah like she's there type of thing. But yeah, I think she's a pretty good actor, and I think with something like Ahsoka Tano, I think I don't the hardest part is obviously going to be like getting that into a live action form.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
and not only
exactly. I
that, but
think
like
that's
yeah,
the thing.
and also like Mandalorian's budget, I'm assuming is quite big, so I think they can pull it off. The real question is, can she pull off the I guess the emotional weight of Ahsoka Tano, which I think she can. From what I've seen of her act, she can act emotional. And I guess she has the whole thing. Just bringing it to live action is obviously the hardest part.
Yeah, exactly. I think ultimately, I like her. I liked her character on like Defenders and all the well, not I didn't like
Well, you
Defenders,
didn't
but
like
I liked her
Defenders,
in
but yeah,
Defenders.
like stuff like
Yeah,
Daredevil and things like that. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, like she was pretty good in that from memory. And yeah, like because this is going to be like the last time I think we saw Ahsoka in I guess the where would have been the last time? Because I think she's supposed to play like an older version of her, right?
Yeah, because
And I
originally
think it's
Clone
supposed to
Wars,
be
and then she was in what is it, Rebels. Um,
Rebels. That's true. Yeah, at the end of Rebels. So yeah, so I guess it's going to be like a post Rebels, like depiction of her. So
yeah,
yeah, I think ultimately like whether she lives or dies on the screen will be based on how accurate they make her character look to the original Ahsoka, right? Because I don't know if you heard like there was a bit of like a controversy because I think a lot of people wanted the actual voice actor of Ahsoka to play her, because she had previously done like cosplaying as Ahsoka as well. So people were like, "Oh, why don't you let her do it?" Like, and there is also like this kind of general, perception, like I was mentioning before, about how, people from TV jumping onto movies, like that's really hard. A similar thing that's very difficult is voice actors jumping from being like the voice of something to the actual actor. The only kind of recent version of that I remember seeing is what is it? Who's the guy who plays the robot in Avengers, the flying one that's in love with Elizabeth Olsen's character?
Oh,
Because
thinking of a jiggy. Yeah, yeah, I forgot his name, but it's very English.
not Ultron,
Yeah,
but Ultron's
the English one.
Vision. He plays the Vision. He
Yeah,
plays the Vision. So like his
Paul
the
Bettany. That's
Vision.
his name.
Yeah,
Bettany.
yeah, yeah.
I
Bettany.
told you
So
it was very
Bettany
English.
So Bettany was originally just the voice of like Tony
Jarvis.
Stark's AI, right? Jarvis. And then that eventually kind of allowed him to be kind of slowly introduced as the voice of the Vision. So that's like a big exception. I don't know if they kind of really planned to do that, but because how everything kind of eventually turned out, it all worked out in the end.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's very
because
hard.
even I know because because I like animated stuff as well as like video game stuff, and yeah, there always seems to be a whole thing. It's like get the voice actor to do it, and sometimes they can pull it off. Like even I know that when they were trying to cast Harley Quinn, everyone's like, you know what,
Mhm.
who should you get? You should get the most recent voice actor for Harley Quinn, which is Tara Strong. And I was like, yeah, get Tara Strong, Tara Strong. And
Mm.
obviously she didn't get cast, but either way, she still generally plays
Harley
her in
Quinn.
animated
Wait,
film.
Harley Quinn in the latest movie?
It'd be no, probably not in the latest movie. I think that was played by someone else. But
I,
Harley
I think the
Quinn
problem with
in the games, the Arkham games, were played by Tara Strong, and I think in a few other animated things.
oh yeah, yeah, she does the voice for it,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, she does the voice for it, and she does like Tara Strong's known for like Timmy Turner and like Fairly Odd Parents.
Yeah. I
Um,
think I think the problem with Tara Strong is while she has like the voice for Harley Quinn, she doesn't have the age to play a young Harley Quinn, because Harley Quinn's supposed to be like in her like mid 20s, right? Like most Marvel DC characters are supposed to be like either teenagers or 20. Like once you hit the big 30, you're like you've got like a gray beard and you're like the old guy giving the young people like advice, right? Like everybody
Man, it's
in
so
the
weird
Marvel
because
universe.
all these 27-year-olds like living by themselves, having their own lives. Like yes, totally real.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, right? So like, she's obviously like in like she's 47. She looks very young for 47. But yeah, like that's the thing. She probably doesn't have like the age, and that's probably why she's like a bad choice. Whereas, someone like Rosario Dawson, who I think is like I think 40, and that's kind of fine because you are playing literally a older version of Ahsoka. Although one might argue like, oh well, do aliens age at the same rate? You're having that Yoda excuse, right? But I think humanoids age at relatively the same age, and yeah, that's it's pretty cool. It'll be interesting because I think like people won't complain as much about like because people were obviously it kind of reminds me of like the whole controversy with what is it, Starfire, right, with
Mhm.
Titans. Initially, like people were like, oh, it doesn't look anything like Starfire, it looks really bad, blah blah blah. And the thing that kind of killed the character in the first season was the fact that her costume looked nothing like the costume of Starfire in the comics, right? And the moment with season two, they kind of changed her costume and made her look more in line. Well, not exactly in line, but they made her look like not like a stripper, right? For the most part. Which to be fair is kind of like on brand with Starfire, but it doesn't look very pragmatic on like on the small screen, so to speak. And we've seen that, character designs are very, very important for getting people's like interest to watch a movie or a TV show. And we've seen that with something like Sonic, right? Like Sonic literally got delayed so that they could redesign the character and make it look better. And I think that subsequently made the movie succeed and be the success that it currently is. They decided to like take that like what is it like I think it's only like a couple of million that they spent on like the redesign for Sonic, and then subsequently it's now like the biggest like video game movie that's come out, right? And
Damn,
so
Sonic fans.
well, yeah, but that literally all came from the fact that they they technically capitulated to the fan, but but in my eyes, I see it as they kind of made the design choice to be comic accurate or video game accurate. And I think that it was something like the success of, whether Rosario Dawson does well as her character as Ahsoka Tano will be heavily predicated on how accurate she looks like an older version of Ahsoka. If they're able to pull it off, boom, it'll look really, really good. And especially it'll be like a good because she's supposed to be like a little bit of like a good character, but like she doesn't really align herself with like the Jedi. She sees like the Jedi as being like quite corrupt. And stuff like that because I don't think she's technically a Jedi. That's why she's like the first gray Jedi, and she's also like a character that's also been created by um what is it like Dave Filoni, right?
Mm-hmm. Like
So
original creation
obviously,
by him as well, and it's like I think fans pretty much embraced it. Where it's like this feels like an actual Star Wars character, and it wasn't made by and probably heavily probably dictated by George Lucas, but still created by Dave Filoni. You know.
exactly, and so the Mandalorian being his baby as well, like it kind of makes sense that he's gonna try and introduce like aspects of his quote unquote like Star Wars cinematic animated universe. They're all kind of combined, and he already did that with at the end of the last Mandalorian. If you guys haven't watched it, spoiler, but the dark saber is there at the end. So, clearly there's been like a big gap between where we last saw the dark saber and now. And there's like also rumors about maybe Ezra Bridger will be in the show as well. And maybe they might have who's like the main protagonist in the I guess the Rebels TV series because essentially Ahsoka goes to try and look for him. So that might be like some kind of a bridge where they meet and then maybe in because they're currently doing like the Clone Wars TV series now to finish off the original one that started in 2008. There might be like another like semi sequel to Rebels to explain because at the end of Rebels they talk about how yeah we're gonna go look for Ezra. So maybe that might be something that's explored later, like how Ahsoka found Ezra and the shenanigans that led to that. I think my problem is this is like going to be set in a post, I guess, like episode 6, so it all has to like kind of connect to I guess the stupid, Disney Star Wars stuff, and that's a shame because the one big question is where was Ahsoka during all this?
Well, not only that, it's
You
like
know,
what where was Ahsoka doing? Like 3 to 4 is a lot interesting, rather than like the post that's a lot more interesting. Like because it's like everyone's like okay, execute Order 66. Okay, where was Ahsoka? And it's obviously since she wasn't technically quote unquote a Jedi probably at that
mm.
point, or like she kind of left. So I'm like okay, kind of makes all sense that I don't know she was doing her own thing.
Well, that's the thing. Episodes 3 and 4, she's technically, I think, looking for. Um, oh, well, I guess after, yeah, I think she's escaped, and then after episode, I want to say when's Rebels set? Like episode
It's like
5 and 6,
yeah, it's
right?
pretty much. I think it's
Yeah,
5 and 6. Yeah, or four
five
and
and
five.
six.
It's like in that middle ground.
I think it's technically 5 and 6. Right? Anyways, it's not important, right? Like it's set in this period, and yeah, they're essentially like she's going to search for Ezra, and so now we're at like post episode 6. So like we're slowly getting a timeline of where she is at certain periods. But now we get to see her in like a live action form, so that will be very interesting, especially to getting to see white lightsabers on the big screen. That'd be pretty cool as well. Yeah, I look forward to seeing the work that they do. And like again, Dave Filoni has like my trust in terms of making a good show. So I don't think he will kind of take any shortcuts in terms of where Star Wars will be going forward. So I think I'm looking forward. Also, Bill Burr got confirmed as coming back for season 2 too. So
And
yeah,
that's the thing. I
more.
actually liked his character in that one episode. Like, I think a lot of people hated that episode because it kind of felt like a one-off, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was pretty cool.
I think the problem.
I think it's
I
because
think
they
the
just had
people.
cool, colorful characters that also stood out from, like, obviously the Mandalorians is very like stern, like I'm not gonna say shit type of thing. You know, like
Mhm.
I liked it where it was kind of like this kind of basically it reminded me of Suicide Squad. So
Right. Well, yeah. Here's the thing. I think with a lot of the episodes in Mandalore, I think the worst episode would be the
episode
episode
3.
with like the. Is that the bounty hunter one? Is that the one
Oh,
with like
the one where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Before it used to be episode 3, I think that was like, that was pretty much the second to last episode where the guy's like, I'm gonna be a good bounty hunter, but I'm gonna get this big score. You should come with me. And then all of a sudden they
Yeah, I
betray
think
you. I'm like, oh, surprise. That's the worst episode.
because episode 3 is the one where they're on the planet and they have to like fight against the um
Yeah, there's
uh,
basically a Seven Samurai esque type
yeah,
thing.
yeah. You see, I didn't have that big of a problem with that. The one with like, because it was like, okay, it's a paint by numbers, but at least it's like it's set in Star Wars. The one on the planet, which I think is like maybe 2 episodes after that, is like, oh yeah, I'm a bounty hunter. You're gonna help me. I'm gonna betray you, and it's just like it just everything just painted by numbers in that, but it was just very boring and nothing really like progressed. At least with episode 3, like Mando meets the kind of like the ex-army chick to like kind of team up with, and it all plays into the larger story in the end. So it'd be interesting to see like what kind of situation leads to Ahsoka and Mando teaming up, probably over the child, right? Like to get like the Baby Yoda character, probably going to lead to her like either training it or something or other. But yeah, that's that aspect of Star Wars. Another aspect of Star Wars that I'll briefly
The
mention,
gift that keeps on
because
giving.
again, yeah, the gift that keeps on giving is the Rise of Skywalker novelization. Because in the novelization, there is a hint that the uh, Emperor Palpatine might return back from the dead, so to speak. In one of the passages, one of the titular characters asks, like, Poe asks, General Leia thought they destroyed the Emperor at the Battle of Endor, Poe said, but then he came back, more powerful than ever. You think he might come back again? Finn said. Maybe, or some other evil will rise. Evil always rises. And then, nah, Finn said, not for a long time anyways. It literally
Uh
says NAW, nah. Man, that's some bad writing.
Man,
But
that
yeah,
that
like
so sounds like it's in the Star Wars universe, guys.
yeah. And well, that's the thing. I think very much they're trying to keep it open-ended to be like, oh, he might come back, he might not. No, just say he's dead. Like it'd be like you would have been. It would have been better to just be like, I think he's gone for good, but that doesn't mean evil won't rise again. Like that's how you're supposed to kind of have a definitive thing. I think they're just keeping it there to be like, oh, maybe we might have some ideas where he'll come back and it'll be quote unquote interesting. But I don't think anybody wanted Palpatine back. At
Well,
least not in the
especially
way that.
even in these movies, let alone come back for a third time. It's kind of like, like
Mhm.
if you have a villain, you had the good villain like storyline with episode 6. You don't have to bring it back again, type of thing. It's like it feels like a very much like a cop out, and it's like develop another type villain. It's like I believe that you can. It doesn't always have to be Palpatine.
Yeah. Look, again, the writing at Disney has been horrible.
Because
All the kind
you'd
of
think they have like like checks and balances where they're just like, okay,
no,
that's shit, or like
no.
like a
They
law
no, they don't
consultant,
though.
like a
No,
consultant
but
being
they
like,
don't
okay,
though.
that doesn't match with this or whatever.
Yeah, but they clearly don't, because it's very much dependent on, well, like we saw what happened with The Last Jedi, that there wasn't any checks and balances. So I personally don't believe there are any checks and balances. Otherwise, we would have seen a better quality film come out, but we didn't. So ultimately, it's kind of in the air of whether Disney's able to kind of ride the storm going forward with these new kind of Star Wars properties that will be coming out in the next couple of um, you know like months and years, like with the high, like what is the High Republic and stuff like that. Like if they're able to kind of um get that interesting, maybe like people will start coming back. But for the most part, I don't know. I don't
The
really
only
think
thing that
so.
everyone seems to be interested in is the Mandalorian, and it's just kind of like that's
Hmm.
seems to be it.
That.
And it's like everyone else, all the other projects seem to be like, yeah, whatever. So
Hmm. Yeah, it's a shame, but I guess we'll just have to see whether or not Disney is able to kind of pull it off what they're trying to do going forward. But yeah, I guess we'll start going with the our reviews about things we've watched this week. I've watched um, Altered Carbon Resleep. Now this is a Netflix original anime, which is always very interesting to see Netflix kind of dipping their toes into the whole anime stuff, because I think they're doing it more and more, right? Like they've got like what is it?
they've got a lot of
I
stuff, and
forgot.
I think it's like yeah, they've got what is it called, the Violet Evergarden, Devilman Crybaby. And they're doing a few other stuff as well. And obviously they've got the live action Cowboy Bebop and Avatar. No, it was One Piece and Avatar as well. Like
Mhm.
they're not only doing that, but on top of that, they've got all this other stuff. So, and they're also doing a lot of stuff like simulcast stuff for a lot of English voiceover work for anime. So it's like I feel like Netflix has probably found their niche where they're just like we want to go up against like someone like Crunchyroll, for example. Um,
Mhm.
so I think like they've kind of found their niche where it's like anime people can go to like Netflix as well. So it's like yeah, they've done this, and yeah, I haven't watched it, but I forgot it existed, but I am interested to see what they do with it, because like I guess Cyberpunk, you mostly see that in aside from like obviously books, animated wise, is always in like anime and stuff like that, and they always do a really good job. Even like something like Ghost in the Shell, which is one of my favorites, and it's one of those top tier cyberpunk cyber esque stuff. So I'm wondering, and they also have a Netflix release of that coming out. I think probably
Mhm.
in a few weeks as well. So, but tell me,
Of the original series.
oh yeah, they're making a new Ghost in the Shell animated show
Oh right, yeah,
on in
yeah, but it's
Netflix,
just
but
gonna
it's
be in
it's like
3D. But it's gonna
3D,
be
and
3D.
everyone's like, I don't know about this 3D because 3D animated
Yeah.
stuff doesn't really work. But
Well, look, to be fair, I don't necessarily have a problem with 3D anime per se. Like Altered Carbon is the Resleeved is um a sorry, like a 3D anime. Um but I didn't think it was bad. Like you're not gonna get like the cool kind of picturesque and stylized stuff like you do with animes, but it does have like a really good story. And like the thing is, you can watch it in Japanese because originally it was like by default in English, but then I changed it to Japanese with subtitles, and it works really well. And I think it's technically designed to be, because like how like you'll see it with the dub, like the mouths don't like technically match up with what the people are saying in English.
mhm.
But the moment you switch to Japanese, it does. So I think like it is technically designed to be a anime,
Yeah,
like
it
a
was probably like
Japanese
created
anime.
slash made in Japan.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. But yeah, the story of it is essentially it's a prequel, I believe. I originally thought it was a sequel, but I believe it's like a prequel film. And essentially, Takeshi Kovacs, he gets needle casted, and he needs to, like, in order to get information about that he needs. I think it was about the creator, that he's like, sorry, um, the rebellion leader. Like he's trying to find more information about her. He has to work and for this like yakuza to try and find out who is like kind of being involved with like the assassination of this yakuza leader's like brother. And so he's kind of like roped into like protecting a tattoo artist who is kind of supposed to be like a typical kind of anime young anime girl, like sidekick character, if you can kind of imagine. And it's quite funny that you mentioned Ghost in the Shell. There is literally a character who reminds me of the main character in this movie. She's got like pink hair. I won't reveal who she is, because you might go watch it. Yeah, Don. I do
yeah,
recommend watching it.
I'll probably watch it. But yeah, she's
It,
probably
it,
like Major, for example. Yeah.
yeah, she's more or less like the major character. And that's the thing that's such a shame. Like this whole movie, it's only for like an hour and a half or something like that, and it's way better than season 2 of Altered Carbon. And it's such a shame because because the thing is, it kind of builds up. It's got like the Japanese aesthetic. They're at this Japanese like kind of hotel. There's like an AI who's like supposed to be. I think it's called Odai, and it's kind of like how what is it? The AI in Altered Carbon. He kind of like plays that role in that particular show. So yeah, there's things like that. And there's like all these assassinations, a lot of like fight scenes. It's really cool. And it kind of builds on the world of Altered Carbon. But I don't know. I feel like after season 2, they can only go, um, I guess, backwards in terms of like the story that they're gonna try and explore. But yeah, in terms of like a quality, a movie that's like, if you want to watch something that's like set in like a cyberpunk universe, even as a one-off, if you've never watched Altered Carbon, it still functions as a kind of movie to kind of get you into the show as well, or just as a one-off anime movie. It's got all the like kind of tropey anime stuff as well. So yeah,
Which
it's
I
really
think a
cool.
lot of people do hate. I think because like my whole thing is like, for example, I always bring it back because it's always a questionable thing.
Mm,
Is that the Batman Ninja movie?
mhm.
I think people
It doesn't
a
it
lot of
doesn't
people were
jump
just
the
like, oh, like this is all right, and then it got really anime, and everyone's like, what the hell is this?
I
So
think the problem with Batman Ninja is that they like nobody kind of asked for the giant robot fight at the end. I
the
think
big
that's
mecha
when it,
fight, everyone's like,
yeah,
what?
that's where the movie kind of jumped the shark. I think everything before that is like, you can kind of get away with like, okay, yeah, Bruce Wayne just happens to find all these characters who are analogs for people from his kind of world, right? There's like a Nightwing, there's like a whatever. Like a Robin and all that, but I think like, oh, okay, now all the characters make a giant, I guess, what is it, feudal Japan mecha robot. I think that's the part people were like, okay, this is where it's kind of. If it was like something like Power Rangers, maybe if it was, that would be a little bit more cool because I've been reading like the Power Rangers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover comics. And that's really cool because they recently had a thing where all the Power Rangers couldn't use their power coins, so they couldn't transform. So then the Ninja Turtles were given their abilities, and so there's like these Ninja Turtles that have like the Power Ranger armor on them, and so it looks pretty dope. The way that they designed it, like that's a good way to kind of introduce like a bit of like a genre flip. Whereas that I think that's a problem with Batman Ninja. It kind of jumped the shark in terms of even what's reasonable, especially given that Batman Ninja is technically supposed to be like I guess
Semi-realistic.
well, not semi-realistic, but targeted towards like an American audience. Americans don't mind anime or manga and stuff. I'm pretty sure in America in particular, they've been consuming more manga than they are comics, American comics at the moment, which is obviously a bit of a concern. But yeah, with something like Altered Carbon, I don't think it jumps the shark at all. Like, it like, it does have like the typical kind of anime like kind of fights and stuff. So there's a lot of entertaining aspects of it, and it has like a pretty like simple, decent story that keeps it as like a through line throughout the story to keep you like invested. So
Mm.
yeah, I would recommend Altered Carbon Resleeved. It's much better than Altered Carbon Season 2. That's my review.
Shots fired. But yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree with the Alter Carbon season 2. We talked about it a few episodes ago, where it's like we can definitely tell it's like a drop down in quality and I guess direction of the show.
Mm. I think purely from a story aspect, right? Like all the actors were fine. I had no problem with any of the actors. Like the design choices were fine. Like I really liked a lot of the kind of like they go to like those like kind of clubs and stuff, and they look very like out there and bizarre. Yeah, a lot of the kind of acting and how it looks visually is fine. It's just the story that ties everything together is a bit like, huh? What? Okay. I'm supposed to care why. you know, it's all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you've watched a movie that I've actually been interested in watching. It's called Code 8, right?
Yes, Code 8.
So yeah, so what's that about?
Yep. So this is I'd say it's a semi relatively smaller slash indie film, that pretty much has gone. I guess went semi viral just because of I guess the cast, and who was producing it, which is Stephen Amell and also his I think brother Robbie Amell. Um, so this is a Canadian film by a director named Jeff Chan, which I'm assuming he's a no name director because I haven't heard much of what he's done. But essentially, this kind of follows I guess the premise of this is that we live in a world of people who have powers. You wouldn't call them superheroes, but they're just people who have powers. And we live in this kind of like a authoritarian kind of police state where obviously these people who have powers, the police don't trust them. So essentially, they're going to be monitored all time. They're going to be registered. And essentially, if you do get caught, you know, for example, being not registered and still using your powers, you basically go to jail. So it kind of sets the kind of scene for this movie, which follows Robbie Amell's character, Connor, who basically has a sick mum, because she has powers as well. However, she's hiding them, and it does this thing over time where you kind of get sick. And obviously, it's the general story plot line is, mum's sick, they don't have enough money. So Robbie Amell's character Connor goes through
Commits crimes.
Commits crimes with, you know, Stephen Amell's character Garrett, who is also kind of a what do you call it, like an also a meta, which is more like psychic powers. And also they have a kind, I guess they form a team, a different type of people who have different powers to kind of like pull off heists, I guess. And that's kind of the general premise of it. And I think the movie does a really exceptional world building. As I mentioned before, this isn't probably done with a big budget. I'm not quite sure what the budget is, but it wouldn't be too big, I don't think. But I really enjoyed it because, you know, I think it established such a world enough of how people are treated, like I guess people with powers are treated in day-to-day life. But on top of that, you know, I guess the crime aspect, because for example, even like Stephen Amell's character Garrett, he isn't the top dog. He's like the middleman that's trying to please the other, I guess, mafia management. You know, and he's trying to get there to that point. So it kind of has this chain of, you know, essentially, you know, I want to commit these crimes to get this much money to do is whatever. And I feel like it does a really good job of, like, as I mentioned, establishing the world, and people have some really cool powers. Like, for example, you see a chick who does this that kind of has like a healing factor. You know, obviously the main character Connor has like electricity type powers. So it kind of reminded me of Infamous at some points because Robbie Amell kind of has really short hair. I'm like, oh yeah, Infamous was cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say that kind of gave me the same vibes when I saw it as well.
Yeah, and also that has, like, you know, like police trying to chase you and things like that. So it's like, you know, and actually another thing I do remember is like, yeah, special effects are done quite well, especially for a smaller film. And action is actually done quite well, which I'm surprised about. I wouldn't say it's probably the best thing out there, but I enjoyed the film. And you know, it's one of those kind of like average films where it's like it's something and it's pretty damn good. And I think you get really good acting from everyone a part of it. I do feel like at the end there's a little bit weird. There's a little bit of a weird kind of story thing that kind of happens, which I don't really like. I'm not gonna obviously spoil it, but essentially, I just feel it was just a really lazy thing that they did in the last like 15-20 minutes. I'm like, yeah, you know, you didn't have a way to wrap it up in a nice bow that you just put this thing in here last minute. That's probably like my own kind of negative about it, but overall, I think I enjoyed Code 8, and I think you should definitely, you know, spend the time to watch it because I think it's only like an hour and 40 minutes. And I think it's a pretty competent film that I think kind of semi flew under the radar. Unless, like, obviously, if you weren't a fan of like Stephen Amell from Arrow, you wouldn't even know about this. I don't think.
Yeah, like I forget where I randomly saw it. Like I think I might have just saw like a random trailer of the film, and I'm like, oh hey, it's Stephen Amell. Maybe I'll watch it. But but then subsequently I hadn't, so I'll have to have a look at it going forward. So
and also it's really weird because like Stephen Amell, I think this is normal talking voice. Because like in Arrow, he was always like he had like I don't know, like a deeper tone when he talked.
Deeper voice that he puts.
And I swear to God, in Code 8 when he's talking, I think this is normal Canadian accent. I'm like, this is your normal voice, isn't
it? Yeah, that's really. I didn't know. Is he Canadian?
Yeah. Well, that's why. Oh yeah, all the CW shows are shot in Canada, anyways. Like Flash, Arrow. I think they're pretty much all Canadian.
Man, I grew up watching Canadian live action shows as well when I was a kid. So, with all the like, what was it, Degrassi and what? There's all these kind of big ass shows that came from Canada, like cartoons and stuff
Yeah,
that
basically
here in
anything that
Australia
if
we
you're a
watch.
kid that was in like Commonwealth places, pretty much majority of it
Yeah,
would
yeah,
you basically
exactly.
were taught by Canadians.
Exactly. So you see, that's how the Canadians got us once again. So okay, cool, Code 8. I'll have to go check it out. Now you've also watched another movie
Yes.
that follows a similar numbering convention called Underground 6. What
Well,
is that
yeah,
about?
to refrain, it's actually called Six Underground. But
Oh, it's called
either way,
6 Underground. Oh, okay.
either way. But yeah, this is a Netflix movie,
Okay.
and it's actually directed by Michael Bay. So I think this is pretty much
Oh.
his most recent film that isn't got to do with Transformers. Which
Hmm.
basically I think a lot of people, including me, were very happy because like I'm like my whole thing is like I don't care about Transformers that much. Like I do, but I don't. Like he's done a few things here and there, but like I wanted him to stay away from Transformers and kind of
Sure. Understandably.
do his own kind of thing.
What do you
That
think?
is
Actually, before you continue, what do you think they should do with the Transformer property? Should they
uh
just shelve it and wait like 5 years and then reboot it, or?
I well that's the thing. I think I like for example Bumblebee came out and I thought that was a pretty
Hmm.
good okay-ish film. It didn't make the money that the rest of the Transformers does because obviously probably there's a lot of stagnation of the franchise, I think, and the second one is obviously there's no real big action set pieces that people I guess see Michael Bay films for, but like or Transformer films for. Um,
Hmm.
but like I think for maybe Transformers, I think maybe follow the kind of the cartoon almost like have something like that go with it or be like very mecha esque. I think like
Hmm.
there's a lot of cool things you can do with Transformers, and if you had
Funnily,
something that had a more tighter story, because remember like
mm,
all the Transformer films aside from Bumblebee were all directed by Michael Bay, and he has his own type of action. And Bumblebee had very little to no action in it. So I'm thinking like get someone else who's good at action films to hold something, like have something a big mecha fights. I think there's a big market for that. You just need to not have Michael Bay there and actually have a competent script. I think that's the only real difference.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So in terms of this film, what was something that you really, really liked coming out of it?
Well, it just reminded me how much I actually kind of like Michael Bay. Like,
Hmm.
because everyone jokes about him all the time. It's action, action, action. And yes, a lot of the time his plots are stupid. And the plot of this movie is stupid. It's just about like people who fake to be death, hence why they're dead to the Six Underground, and they're just basically assassins that kind of do whatever they want. They're kind of like they're basically the A team, but they're not controlled by anyone. That's
So
kind of
so it's supposed to be short for like 6 feet underground, right?
yeah, yeah, pretty much. But
Uh,
each team member is a number. So it's like
yeah,
like
got
number
it. It's
three is
like
the
a.
driver and number six is the sniper or whatever it is. So it's kind of it
Mhm.
follows that kind of plot line. But essentially, my main thing why I love Michael Bay films, and especially this one, is just the set pieces. I don't think you really get many cool action set pieces that you do these days, but like Michael Bay always seems to have these cool ideas slash concepts that just
Mhm.
work, and I'm just like, that's cool. No one else does this. I like it. like,
Mhm.
like for
That's pretty
example,
interesting.
yeah, like for example, like Ryan Reynolds' character, he's basically a millionaire slash billionaire that kind of like pretty much faked his death. He's pretty much the leader of the group. And his whole thing where he got all his money is he's like a genius with with magnets, and he creates these like
Mhm.
magnetic devices. So it's like, oh yeah, I created like the mobile phone, and I created this and created that. But it's really cool because they tie that into the movie and the plot line where it's like, for example, he has this device where the one of the last action set pieces, they're in this kind of building, and he uses this extremely like magnetic pulse. So then everyone's flying in the building left and then to the right, and has these really cool things. Like for example, in the kitchen, he turns on the device and all these knives fly by, and or like someone's about to throw a grenade, he turns on the magnetic device and it pulls back on them. So like stuff like that is that you don't really see many stuff like that, like cool creative ways to do action. um
Mhm.
but then, and I think this is where this movie shines. I wouldn't say obviously as I mentioned before, pretty much like Code 8. I think it's a relatively average film, like an okay film. It won't like amaze you in such a way, but I think like the action is shot really well, and it's got really cool set pieces that I think it's definitely worth the watch. It is quite gory. There are times where like people just get full on just stabbed, and like you see guts and everything. But I'm like,
Mhm.
and I don't remember something like Bad Boys being this gory. But I did enjoy the action. Ryan Reynolds is obviously doing his comedic self, doing his own cool thing, and I think he's perfect. He has that right like tinge of like asshole but funny at the same time. Um,
Yeah, like a good main character kind of character for something like this to keep you like engaged in the action, but then also kind of keep very, I guess, loose and funny, right?
yeah, pretty much, and obviously the kind of the general main story is just to topple down like a government. That's kind of like the main general premise, and of course like I guess they played like Ryan Reynolds' character as like someone who kind of like this is the way we do things. If I get stranded, you're gonna leave me. Whatever. We're not gonna tell each other's names. We all have code names. And obviously
Mhm.
the kind of the progression for his character is just to learn about being a little bit being a little bit nice, a little bit humane, and leave no one behind. So that's kind of like his kind of journey. But as I mentioned before, overall, I think it's a pretty good damn film in a sense of like I just love the action set pieces, just really cool. There's ones where they have one of the team members is kind of like a free runner park hour guy, so there's some really creative stuff doing it that way. And yeah, I think it's just one of those films where it's like it will be lost throughout the annals of time, but I think it's a pretty solid film where it's like, okay, this film's got some pretty good action set pieces, and I think definitely go give it a watch actually as well, because like I feel like if you watch Michael Bay films aside from the what do you call it the Transformer films, I think he's got a pretty good amount of movies. Like obviously, like everyone loves The Rock. Like The Rock's really cool. I think he did that 13 Strong film a while ago, and that was also really good. Like I think his movies are solid and great, and I feel like not many people do action the way he does, especially directing competent action, which I always keep hammering back on. There's not many directors in Hollywood that do good action. So
I do find it interesting that this is like a Netflix like movie, right? Like it's an exclusive movie that he did, so it is very interesting to see that like directors are also making films that are more like that are tailored towards like the Netflix crowd as well, and maybe that's why like it doesn't push I guess the limits of like creativity. Like even you said, like yeah, it's just a team up. They're doing shit. It's a simple concept, and that's kind of like the kind of movie that you kind of want to watch on Netflix, right? Like not necessarily something that will, um, make you question reality, time, and space. It's just supposed to be a fun ride, and that's what this essentially offers. You'd agree?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a really good time with it, and it's one of those things where it's like I liked everyone's personality in this film. That I'm like, I'd be happy if there was some sort of sequel, because like yeah, everyone has their own different kind of chemistry, and I would, as you mentioned before, it doesn't do anything like too unique slash interesting with the plot, but what you get out of it in the cool action set pieces and things like that is like well worth watching it. Even if you just watch like the action set pieces, I think they're really definitely worth it. And as you mentioned, yeah, on Netflix as well. So I find that very interesting as well. How like someone with Michael Bay, who's always on the big picture, big cinema, is got to deal with Netflix for a film, and yeah, and that's why I kind of like a lot of the direct to streaming stuff sometimes, because I guess the middle type movies sometimes can at least get a breather and slash an audience. And I think I think things like Netflix and things like that at least has given more opportunities for those smaller slash medium, um, movies to go through, even if no one's
Mm.
gonna like I guess put money into it. Um, but yeah, that is Six Underground, and the I guess final thing that I watched is a TV show called Dispatches from Elsewhere. Um, and this TV show is kind of directed and also stars Jason Segel. So if you remember him from How I Met Your Mother and the Muppets movie, this is kind of I think his passion project that he's basically been doing for like the past like 3 to 4 years. Because I haven't really have not seen him in like a long time, um, acting or
Hmm.
anything like that. Um, And the premise of this is kind of based off a book that's based on real life events. That essentially is based in it's not really in San Francisco, but it's based in um it's hard to explain what the technical concept is, but it's kind of like a flash mob type of thing, if that makes any sense, where there's these like secret mess. Like essentially what happens is Jason Segel's character, he just lives a very boring life. And he finds this flyer that says, "Do you want to live an interesting life? You know, do these things, yada yada yada." Very reminiscent of like a, what is it? The Ben Stiller film, the Walter Mitty one, where it's like, "I'm just gonna conquer the world and do my own thing." So very reminiscent of that. And essentially he finds this flyer where it says, you know, you want to do all these new interesting things. You know, you are loved type of thing. He goes to this kind of venue. And you know he sees this weird video. It's a weird room, and essentially what happens is, essentially everyone in the group, there's 4 characters. They'll meet up at the end of the episode, the first episode. They're basically all playing like a real live action game. So I guess that's where the flash mob element comes in. But you know they're playing this game where, you know, for example, these actors, they're acting it, but you know it's dramatized in such a way as like, is this real? Is this fake? And that's where it kind of comes down to. So there's these things where they get these clues, and it's kind of like a treasure hunt throughout the, I guess, city. And they're just all trying to kind of solve this mystery of like, who are these people? What are they trying to do? And you know, is this you know, are these people actors, or are they actually legitimately actually trying to kill us type of thing? So it kind of delves into that. And I think that's a unique and interesting premise. I think, as I mentioned, it's based on real life events where I think there was must have been just a bunch of actors that were just like, you know what, we're gonna make the whole world kind of our TV show / movie, and they're all going to be involved, which I really love interesting concepts like that. The interesting part about this TV show, I think it's okay. It could do a lot more in a sense of what it wants to do, but I think for me the interesting part about it is, you have a narrator character that is talking to us. That I guess we can't trust sometimes, or we can. He's kind of the leader of this whole thing anyways. And essentially his whole thing is, you know, the first episode follows Jason Segel's character, and then, you know, as a narrative device, he talks to us where he's like, you know what, and he talks directly to us, being like, you know what, I'm gonna cut all the bullshit. I'm gonna give you dot points about what this character is all about, and it does it in such a way where it's like, I don't want to waste your time. So I felt that was a very interesting concept and idea. And then in the second episode, it's like, now I'm going to make you think about, you know, for example, Simone's character. I'm going to give you the backstory of Simone, and then Janice, which is the Sally Field's character in the TV show. So it's kind of giving us a backstory. Each episode is giving us a backstory of who these people are and how they became like that. For example, Jason Segel's character is just bored with life, as I mentioned. Simone is a transgender lady who doesn't feel at home with anyone, let alone talk to anyone. Sally Field's character, basically, you know, she's an older lady, and she doesn't feel like she has anyone to talk to because she is quite old and her husband's pretty much sick. So you have these unique and interesting concepts, I guess, of humanity, and how everyone is, in different stages of life.
You know, it kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've ever played this game before, where you know, maybe you're bored on a train or something, and you look at someone and you're like thinking like, oh, what their life would be like, you know, whether like they like how complicated or complex it is, or oh, like, you know, oh, they're like going to a job or something like that. I don't know if you've ever done that before. I know with other people, like when they're really bored, they do like a very similar thing. It kind of reminds me of that, like, you know, these people who kind of live like a mundane life, but then the show kind of like hyper focuses on one character and what got them to this place in time and the way they are now. Would you say that it's kind of like that?
Yeah, exactly. It's hard for me to put on words, but yeah, that's pretty much it. And it also has this, I guess, take a voyeuristic type where it's like you're seeing these people's lives, and obviously since you have the narrative character talking to us about like, I think like the whole TV show feels like an experiment on the viewer. That's what I kind of get, because essentially the narrator is called Octavio. You know him as, I guess, one of the like the easiest way to explain, he's an Australian actor. He was in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. He was the guy who he's the, I guess, the main leader. Not Snoke, but he's kind of like the guy ahead of everyone. So he's like that dude. And he basically just says, now imagine you were this character. All these type of little signs here and there. So I feel like this show is kind of playing a semi trick on everyone who does watch it. It is quite interesting. It's probably about 4 or 5 episodes in currently at the moment. I do find it quite interesting, and it kind of has an interesting hook. I do want to see more of it. It does have like a lower score on everything. I don't know why not many people are enjoying the show. Maybe they thought there was going to be something else, but I think I think I quite enjoy the show that much. I think it's mostly because of the characters and their journey, and I think the whole thing is like we're supposed to feel for these characters, which I am getting, and I think that's kind of the main driving of this kind of story of like these people who have 4 completely different backgrounds of where they are and who they are, and how they can kind of work together to kind of solve this mystery / game together, and things, and I think I enjoy it. It is quite an odd show. I think I think narratively it is very interesting. It does stuff that you wouldn't see in normal TV, and even visually does some cool, interesting stuff as well. So, if you're into something that's a little bit quite off the beaten track, I think at least give it like one episode to see if it gets you kind of like hooked in about this whole kind of mystery of what they're playing. So that's Dispatches from Elsewhere.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like with a show like that, like maybe it'll find its like audience maybe as it continues. It's supposed to be like a 10 episode. Is it supposed to be like a 10 episode series, or is it like
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be 10 episode, but I have no idea if it's supposed to be like a second season type of thing. I feel like there's a lot of shows, I guess like that, where they're just like a one and done, or I feel like it's better one and done, but then they say they get picked up for a second season, which I never really get. I always feel like if your narrative is going to be one season, keep it one season. But yeah, that is Dispatches from Elsewhere. And yeah, that will be us for this week. Remember, you can always listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Libsyn, and we do stream when we can on our YouTube channel, Marketing Movies. So until next time, maybe Henry Cavill's gonna delay Wonder Woman 1984 even more, but who knows? Till next time, see ya.
Gotcha.